Welcome to the Green Hour on 900 AM WURD, Word on the Weekend.
You can also find us online at www.900amwurd.com and in the community. My co-hosts are Michael Ledbetter and Dr. Paul Hopkins, and each week we bring clarity to the complex discussion on health and environment. We encourage clean living from the inside out. A centerpiece of this is maintaining a healthy lifestyle and getting informed about the connection between good health and what is happening in the world around you.
This includes what you consume, what you wear, what products you use on your body, how you clean your home, what you drive, what you purchase, the decisions you make every day.
Welcome, everyone, to the Green Hour.
Good morning, family.
Good morning, family.
We are very excited today. Our guest is Tom Fenley, who's the political director of Yes on 37, California Right to Know. They are a grassroots coalition of California citizens that have put on the ballot a requirement to label genetically modified organisms. Now, I want to welcome Tom.
Morning.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
We're going to start off with a clip from State Representative Kucinich. He was on the floor this week. Hold on one moment.
The Food and Drug Administration decided that genetically modified organisms were the functional equivalent of conventional foods. They arrived at this decision without testing GMOs for allergenicity, toxicity, antibiotic resistance, and functional characteristics. As a result, hundreds of millions of acres of GMO crops were planted in America without the knowledge or consent of the American people. No safety testing, no long-term health studies. The FDA has received over 1 million comments from citizens demanding labeling of GMOs. 90% of Americans agree. So why no labeling? I'll give you one reason. The influence and the corruption of the political process by Monsanto. Monsanto's been a prime mover in GMO technology, a multi-million-dollar GMO lobby here, and a major political contributor. There is a chance that Monsanto's grip will be broken in California, where a GMO labeling initiative is on the ballot. And here in Congress, my legislation, H.R. 3553, will provide for a national labeling bill. Americans have a right to know if their food is genetically engineered. It's time for labeling. It's time for people to know how their food is being
produced. Yeah.
Wow.
Produced. There we
Wow.
go. That is State Representative Kucinich. Tom, can you tell us about Proposition 37? What's going on out there in California?
That's almost everything you need to know, really. Both in Congress and at the executive level at the FDA, and then also in 19 or 20 states, there have been failed attempts to label genetically engineered foods. So the good thing about California is we have an initiative process where we can just take the issue directly to voters. So that's what we've done with Prop 37. So all Proposition 37 does, it does two main things. One is that it requires a label on any foods containing genetically engineered ingredients. 50 countries already have this label. In fact, many of these same companies, like Monsanto, that are opposing Prop 37, they already put these labels on their food products in other countries. They just don't give us this information here in America. So that's the first thing. It just puts this label on genetically engineered foods for GMOs. And then secondly, for those same foods, if they're genetically engineered, the companies can't market those foods as natural. So, if you look at food labels, there's natural, naturally grown. Mm-hmm. Well, that would be prohibited, too. If they contain genetically engineered ingredients, which is about the least natural way of making food one can even imagine, it's literally, these are foods that are literally made in a lab.
Tell us what genetically modified or genetically engineered foods are.
Right. Basically the idea is in a laboratory, genetically engineered foods are created by injecting genes from one species and injecting these genes into another species. So, for example, a salmon could have engineered into it genes from an eel, or as is now commonly the case, you can actually inject viruses or bacteria into a given plant DNA. So it's crossing of species at the genetic level. And, this technology has been around for only about 20 years. And the reality is we don't know all the implications of it. We don't, they're not proven safe. So that's the basic thing.
And we're talking about fruits, vegetables, processed, packaged foods, meats, beverages. I mean, basically
it's like
everything.
90% of the food that's in the stores, in the aisles, it's
probably even more
GMOs.
It's probably even more
yeah,
than
that's
that.
That's exactly right. Prop 37 covers packaged foods and raw foods. So, yeah, as you mentioned, if you go down the grocery store aisle, some estimate as much as 80% of the packaged foods in grocery store aisles contain genetically engineered ingredients in the U.S. So there's no, and then you can kind of get into I guess just the other thing to add is, in fact, just overall, when you think about genetically engineered crops, they say they increase yield or they're better at resisting pests or they can withstand droughts. The fact is, none of those things are actually proven. Which means that it's just another reason why the idea that costs would go up makes no sense. Because even if they were to shift away from growing these kind of crops, there's no evidence that what they shift to would be more expensive.
Wow. Tom, I'm there's a cost of, putting some labels on a product. What
That's
about
right.
the cost of us consuming GMOs and becoming sick?
Well, exactly.
I mean, these genetically modified foods are getting us sick. And Dr. Paul, I think you can talk and elaborate on a little bit on that.
Yeah, we can go on and on literally about the connection between GMOs and how it causes and is a systemic effect with the genetically, or let's just say all chronic diseases across the board. Everything from heart disease to diabetes to anything that are going in with the blood, because really it's altering your level of DNA. We just talked about Tom just talked about how they're infusing bacteria and virus, and that whole concept for genetically altering is because they need to break the cell wall. So they break the cell wall with bacteria or virus. That's the way they infuse to actually start to now take a little bit from this and a little bit from that. So they, whether it's a salmon, whether it's a flounder, whatever.
A
Flamato, which means they're mixing it with the tomato, So these are things that have to happen, and it does not suffice anyone but them, as those who are, so only thing that's going to go down is profit for them. That's basically what's going to happen.
Exactly. I have a question in terms of, it seems that we're fighting for the right to just know what's in our food. What about the fight against these genetically engineered seeds and foods? Have we sort of resigned ourselves to a hybrid food system? Tom?
Well, it's a good question. So, here in California with Prop 37, we are laser focused on communicating to people that all we are putting on these products is a label. There are some supporters of, opponents of genetic engineering who think, given the fact that there's no health studies showing them to be safe, and indeed there are several that point to, including one that just came out this past week, that point to them being seriously harmful, who would favor an outright ban, such that we just didn't have, we weren't ingesting these foods. Things like corn derivatives or soy derivatives, because, so whether it be high fructose corn syrup or corn whatever,
Cotton
soy
seed oil.
soy lecithin, all these things, because right now about 90% of each of those crops, 90% of soy crops and corn crops in the U.S. now are genetically engineered. They're genetically modified crops.
Wow, that's a big number. Also, Tom, I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, that you can say you're natural and have GMOs in it and get away with it currently.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Wow.
There's basically no rules for natural right now. So this would be the clearest rule, and arguably you could go farther in various ways, but we're simply saying, look, if it's genetically engineered, you can't also call it natural.
The Food and Drug Administration decided that genetically modified organisms were the functional equivalent of conventional foods. They arrived at this decision without testing GMOs for allergenicity, toxicity, antibiotic resistance, and functional characteristics. As a result, hundreds of millions of acres of GMO crops were planted in America without the knowledge or consent of the American people. No safety testing, no long-term health studies. The FDA has received over 1 million comments from citizens demanding labeling of GMOs. 90% of Americans agree. So why no labeling? I'll give you one reason. The influence and the corruption of the political process by Monsanto. Monsanto's been a prime mover in GMO technology, a multi-million-dollar GMO lobby here, and a major political contributor. There is a chance that Monsanto's grip will be broken in California, where a GMO labeling initiative is on the ballot. And here in Congress, my legislation, H.R. 3553, will provide for a national labeling bill. Americans have a right to know if their food is genetically engineered. It's time for labeling. It's time for people to know how their food is being
produced. Yeah.
Produced. There we go.